This episode is brought to you by Goals.com, the sales performance platform built to help teams stay focused, motivated, and on track. While most CRMs just track data, Goals.com drives real results. It's simple, affordable, and designed to help your sales team hit targets faster, without the headache of complex setup or costly consultants. Whether you're using a CRM or not, Goals.com works seamlessly to elevate your performance. Book a fun, fast demo today at Goals.com.
All right, welcome back to the Goals.com podcast, the show where we uncover what drives sales performance at the highest levels. Today's guest is Mark Hoppenjans, Chief Revenue Officer at a family office located in Southern California. Mark's career spans multiple successful roles in sales leadership, including Sebrend, Superior Lithographics, and Green Bay Packaging. Let's dive into how Mark is shaping the future of sales and sustainability in the packaging world. Mark, thanks for being here. You've had an impressive career in the packaging industry, from Green Bay Packaging to Superior Lithographics, Sebrend. What initially drew you to the world of packaging, and what's kept you passionate about it over the years?
So what drew me, I had a great math teacher in high school that was really into geometry, and I had a great art teacher that was really into paper and ink. So when I was interviewing for my first packaging job, I was in Michigan, and they were running Pop-Tarts boxes for Kellogg's and cereal boxes. And you look into these machines, and there's all this circular motion and this ink transfer and speed and overlaps. And I just kind of looked at it and said, I think I can get that. I think I can follow that pretty quick. From a technical component, I was pretty comfortable being inside the machines pretty early with printing and cutting. And so, it happened pretty naturally. And I think the second part of the question with what keeps you passionate is just the evolution of it. There's more and more demand on packaging, whether it's structural or whether it's graphic or promoting, communicating so many things. And, the speed and the competition for the senses of all consumers now is pretty heightened. The print quality of packaging is really taken a role in that. So it's been great.
Love it. You moved from a general manager role to VP of sales. How did your leadership approach evolve when making that transition?
Well, when you're a general manager, you have full P&L responsibility. So it's sales, operations, and finance and capital expenditure. The magic answer there is accounting. Cost accounting within manufacturing usually involves contribution margin. So it's, the materials and the variable manufacturing costs and freight play into it. And I think with the accounting side, you ultimately become a better sales leader because you become much more business minded. You're looking for, with packaging, Andrew, you're always looking for repeat orders and repeat business. It's not just a one time. You really want the 30th order, not the first one, right?
Right.
So when you're pricing and when you're looking at partnerships and people to call on, I think from an accounting perspective, and every CFO is going to love this answer, Ken's going to love this answer from our place. I think you just get better because your accounting knowledge gets better. And you just have more sensitivity for operations and finance when you've spent time responsible for all three.
In your time leading sales teams, what's been the most valuable lesson you've learned about building strong, high-performing sales teams?
I think trust, for sure. You have to really work hard to find business-minded people that can operate as a team and want to contribute as a team, but trust more than anything else. I think sales, it's the weirdest of all business professions because you are a steward of the company's money, but you're out spending it, really looking for what we're going to get a return on, what's going to turn into those repeat orders. So, as you have teams in Phoenix or Atlanta or anywhere in the US or Canada, they're spending a lot of time in front of the customers and a lot of time really engaged, and they have to feel trusted, and they have to know that they can make decisions for the business and for the customer, and that you've got their back and that they're supported all the way up through the organization to the executive team. So I think more than anything else, that's the best part.
When you were VP of Sales and Sustainable Business at Sebrend, you're balancing sales leadership with sustainability efforts. How did you integrate sustainability into your sales strategy?
Very, very directly. I think you're right to ask that question. There's so much noise with sustainability. It's hard to figure out what's making a company money or what's costing them money or what's really valuable to the consumer. And so what we've done is, we really go from the outside in and kind of reverse engineer. So if the retailers who dictate a lot of the packaging guidelines really desire a certain sustainable material, then you provide it based on that. And your sustainability platform and what you offer works in reverse. And same with their consumers. If more and more of their consumers in certain segments like produce or what have you are really seeking more sustainable options, then you have to do that. But you have to focus on the business case. A great example, so typically packaging is about 10% of the wholesale price of what goes into a retailer. So as we develop sustainable options, whether it's biodegradable or what have you, consumers will typically take about 3% on an increase if they know it's a sustainable package, if they know it's more responsible. But literally at 3.1, you can forget. So
Hmm.
when you look at that model of 10% of wholesale, what you're looking at is if it increases the material cost more than 30%, then we really don't offer it. And we take a very direct approach with how we communicate that to our customers and what the repeat order and what that's going to be, right? Because sustainability, there's been a lot of Lucy in the football analogy where everybody gets excited about it and then it costs too much and you kind of circulate back and forth, right? But those end users, we have a large customer that's based out of Europe. We have to be EcoVadis rated every year. So our responsibility and our data has to be submitted, but we keep it very focused on the business case. It has to be good for our company. It has to be valuable to our customers for us to justify it.
Packaging is a critical part of many industries, but it's also highly competitive. What are some strategies you use to differentiate in such a crowded market?
Well, we really focus on, or I focused on kind of like going back to the geometry, the technical component. There's so much automation and so much setup. If you're in a situation where you're doing 16 boxes an hour or 27 bags a minute or what have you within your automation and you're on a packing line, you really have to focus on the efficiency and how your product's working on that automation. So I think more than anything else in packaging, you really have to focus outside in, which means your team's got to be out there in the field. They've got to be in the packing houses. They've got to be around the automation. You learn so much, Andrew, from the operators on how you can make your packaging more efficient, how you can adjust tensions and how you're packing it. And, if you get them from 13 a minute to 14 a minute, that's a big deal. But if something happens where they have to run it slower and they're getting 9 a minute, that's a big problem. Just, staying focused on that and staying innovative. I think service, as we came out of COVID, I think everybody got a little bit easy behind screens and not having to spend so much time with customers. And, we really worked to play a lot of offense and get out there so that we could continually get that data back. You really learn about your product from the folks packing it. And that's where you're going to get the best ideas and the best intel.
It makes sense. When you're building a sales team, what key qualities do you look for in a sales rep to ensure long-term success?
Yeah, I always ask a couple of the same questions, and it's, usually tell me about, so within the recruiting process, I'm very robust. I want it to be a fit for both of us. And, we invest a lot of time and take them through a fair amount and give them a chance to learn our business and make presentations about what they think. But I really look for in the interview process, tell me about a total failure or a decision you made that cost the company money or, was a complete fail. And how did you handle it after? Tell me about a time where you had to teach yourself something all from scratch. You were independent, way away from the farm, and you had to be creative and really, get up to speed. And then I ask them 3 or 4 questions around just business mindedness, because again, we take raw materials and we convert them into other things and we charge more than it costs to do that. And I just want some understanding and some business thinking and a little entrepreneurial where they really understand the business side of it. And I feel like when you have that mixed with a little bit of hunger, it usually makes for a great team.
Yeah, definitely. How do you manage customer expectations and maintain strong relationships in a market where supply chain disruptions are frequent and costs are rising?
Yeah, you and I have talked about this. I think, being in the arena every day is so important. And, our arenas are Canada, Latvia, Mexico. We have product coming in from Peru. So, you can't really take a day off or not play in the arena because there's so many dynamics. Certainly tariffs have been a big discussion, general trade and across border. And when you think about packaging, most people at first don't think about packaging, but raw materials come from a lot of places. They come from the EU or they come from Asia. Many are domestic. So, you really have to try to stay kind of 18 months ahead on the raw material side of it. And I think you have to actively communicate that with business owners. Another thing we've talked about is kind of the evolution of the salesperson where you have to be relevant and you can't just sell one way. And as you get more engaged with the owner of the business, he has to know that you're looking at risk and you're mitigating his risk so that he can have supplies. And, a lot of lessons were learned in COVID. I think more and more lessons are being learned right now with domestic manufacturing and domestic things. But like anybody else with a good balance sheet, you want to control as much of the raw material as you can, secure sources, pay your vendors in 10 days. You want to communicate that to your customer base as well that, hey, we're staying out ahead of it.
Sustainability was a key pillar of your role at Severend. How do you see sustainability shaping the future of the packaging industry, and what steps did Severend take to lead in this process?
I think, more and more consumers and money savers and are going to be alive in 2050 and 2060 and 2070. And so I think sustainability in packaging and business is going to be kind of a steady upward line, but it's going to be jagged because the cost to adopt and the infrastructure to support it, meaning recycling and landfills and such, the technology has to catch up to where they can be reclaimed and reused in a proper way. Certain materials like paper, especially corrugated, has a pretty high recycling rate. But as you work through everything, some products are as low as 3 or 6% total of what's recycled. I think just an understanding that that cost to adopt that 3% going to the consumer is kind of the threshold, and continuing to test and look for new materials and look for new options that can be sustainable or um, just better in general for end of life scenarios. But I think you have to accept that it's not as if next year, all of a sudden, everything's going to be biodegradable. It's just not. I mean, the consumers just won't shoulder that cost.
Hmm.
And also, again, as you get into the automated equipment, it has to run on the machinery. You could have a more sustainable material, but if it slows down the machines, that's a problem. So I think, just getting that alignment to where the cost to adopt and the materials are available. Some of the best sustainable materials, there's just not that much supply. So getting that online and getting that up to speed. So just accepting it's a gradual process, but communicating with the consumers that are the end users for our customers.
I got it. What challenges have you encountered in pushing sustainability initiatives forward, both within the organizations you've worked for and with customers?
So I've not really had to push any forward, right? Most our customers have asked us for it. So we've really been reacting to their formats. And the best thing you can do is if you're going to be a supply chain partner or any sort of supplier is just choose a platform that they accept and just report to that. So EcoVadis has been the one that I'm most familiar with. GRI is another one. And anybody submitting to those two, they're audited. So it's not like you can be partial or you can be kinda. If you're an EcoVadis house and you are rated a certain level, then you are. And they can see the progression and improvements you've made in water and greenhouse gases and waste and things. So yeah, I think the main thing is just consistency. Certainly the values of our own employees have played into it. As we get more and more younger employees, they want more sustainable solutions and they want that to be part of our values. But up until now, it's been much more customer driven for all the right reasons. Again, there's got to be a business case for it.
Hmm. Many companies say they care about sustainability, but what separates the genuine efforts from the greenwashing, let's say? How can sales leaders ensure their efforts are totally authentic?
Well, yeah, again, those two platforms are good ones. P is another one, um, which is carbon based. But EcoVadis is really a great supply chain. It's not terribly expensive for the company to implement. As soon as you have, there's 308 fields that you have to fill out, and then you get audited. I think it's the best thing to do is to kind of take it out of your hands and put it in a third party that is auditing 60 to 80,000, companies a year and see how you compare with them. That way, certainly sustainable data shouldn't be something that's just in-house and not audited, right? Because
Hmm.
you want to see that year over year. So, I think the best way to be authentic is just to do that. But again, also, stay in the arena. We've used a lot of universities. They've got PhD programs that are developing materials, and they've got research groups and oftentimes better equipment to test, meaning recreating what it's like in a landfill and how it reacts and how much carbon it generates. So, just staying engaged in it is a big part of it.
In your experience, what's the biggest mistake companies make when selling packaging solutions to customers, and how can they avoid it?
I think not looking at the whole cycle. When you think of a box or you think of a bag or you think of anything else, you're walking to the grocery store and you're like, okay, you know, this is my Pop Tarts, right? But the way that that goes into the automation, the speed of that, the printing that has to be on it, what it's going to be like for the customer experience when they take it out of the box, how it's going to be disposed of. I think the best packaging design companies, they really, really look carefully at the whole cycle. They go talk to the operators of the equipment, see what they like, see what's going to work, see how it needs to come in properly so that it can operate on the machinery. So I think rather than just getting excited about making a sale on packaging, really taking the time to go through the whole life cycle and just ensuring that it's going to work. I'm not going to say that people don't get elated about packaging and it's not amazing. Of course we love it and we think it's amazing, but there's a lot more communication when things go wrong. Right. Basically, you build it to spec and they expect it's going to work through the whole chain without a problem. So you don't want it to get to the retailer like Loblaw or Walmart or somebody, and all of a sudden the packaging's not right or it's not going to be permitted in store. Putting in the work and not being so excited about the sale, but really more excited about getting the details right is really the key.
Sure. Packaging is often seen as an afterthought for many businesses. How do you change that mindset and position packaging as a value driver in the sales conversation?
Well, it just is. I mean, the turnaround times and deadlines, it just is what it is, right? Even with a new product launch and even with an extremely organized company, you still have a group of stakeholders that need to approve it and sign off on it or often test it. So typically late in the process, our lead times get very compressed. So, within your own organization, you have to really focus on setups, focus on being nimble because typically new projects are new business, right? So, again, thinking about how you want that to repeat and you want to get the 30th order. If you say, hey, we've got an eight working day lead time and, they've got to approve it in 5 and they've got a dock time at Costco to at a distribution center to make the delivery, you got to play, right? So I think there are cases where it's not an afterthought or it doesn't happen at the end, but the ratio is probably 2 to 1 that it does happen that way.
Hmm.
And you just have to accept it and you have to do the best you can to meet the deadline.
Sure. With your experience in the sales of complex solutions, how do you ensure that your team delivers consistent value to clients beyond just the product itself?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that business mindedness and work ethic. If you develop the right team, they're going to be responsive. They're going to develop the trust inside of the inside team. So with product support, they're going to empower everybody to respond quickly. And I think, really, really being in the field, I know that we are doing more Zoom and we are, obviously doing more Teams, and you can't argue with the efficiency of it. But looking eye to eye when the product's being packed, there's just absolutely not a substitute for that. Packaging, if you've got a big territory, there are a lot of overnights. It's not uncommon to have 70% plus travel, a lot of trade show activity that goes to the weekends. It's a lot of hard work and for motivated people, but again it's repeat business, so as you're building those new orders, it's starting to pay annuities and dividends because the repeats come naturally. You don't work as hard for the repeats, right?
Right.
So I think you have to have people that think that way and they want to engage in the field and they want to kind of play in the arena every day. So
Leading sales teams in the packaging industry requires a strong mindset, especially when faced with challenges. How do you stay motivated and keeping your team motivated during tough times?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are tough times. Mostly from a standpoint of if something gets out into the field or it ships and there is a struggle with machinery or with automation, it's really everybody's problem. It doesn't matter who communicated it or what spec was wrong, or again, really thinking about that deadline, right? And so our thought process is that, you have to run into the fire and be a pro when things aren't going well too, right? Bad times are an opportunity to show your professionalism and what your company's about too. And that's just part of it. I mean, there's always going to be, some orders. A lot of people communicate. A lot of people have ideas about it. You have purchasing, you have marketing, you have quality within our operation. A lot of people have to touch that. And certainly there's a lot of stages where something can get missed or things go wrong. So it's part of our business, not a part we love, but you have to kind of energize that too and show what you're about.
Yeah, definitely. Looking back at your career, what advice would you give your younger self as you were just starting out in the sales world?
I think I would probably really focus on the network development because certainly now, with LinkedIn and then social media, you can stay in touch with a lot of people. But as you develop your Outlook contacts and as you develop everything in HubSpot with your contact base, I think just really getting focused and understanding that from day one, that's an asset that's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You can certainly go to Google or you can go to chat or you can go within your immediate technical network within your company to get a lot of things answered. But I mean, you've got a great network yourself. There are people that you can reach out to that can connect dots for you or that can make processes shorter. And, my sense is that you just always need to be nurturing that. It's not enough to like their stuff on LinkedIn. When you're in their city, you got to connect with them and, engage. I think, coming from packaging, Andrew, like interacting with business owners, interacting with engineers, interacting with buyers, you know, you you need kind of all of that because there's going to be times where you're trying to solve a problem where you need to dive into their world and you need their mindset. So yeah, I mean, I think just continuing to really develop that network as an asset from the first day and staying connected to it, being personal with it.
I love that. All right, guys, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Goals.com podcast. A big thank you to Mark Hoppenjans for sharing his insights on leading sales in the packaging industry, driving sustainable business practices, and building high-performance teams. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with your network. Until next time, keep pushing, keep learning, and keep hitting those goals. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Andrew. Enjoyed it.
This episode is brought to you by Goals.com, the sales performance platform built to help teams stay focused, motivated, and on track. While most CRMs just track data, Goals.com drives real results. It's simple, affordable, and designed to help your sales team hit targets faster, without the headache of complex setup or costly consultants. Whether you're using a CRM or not, Goals.com works seamlessly to elevate your performance. Book a fun, fast demo today at Goals.com.